T-minus 20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
This is a beautiful sport. It spans from the shores of Ireland to those of Hawaii, and everywhere in between for 4.5 months, until it's all settled in Houston. But along the way there are questions, and whenever one is seemingly answered, more arise. Can you weather the hits? Can you cement a legacy? Can you get back to the top? Is anyone gonna catch them? Do you believe in miracles? Are they gonna keep them off the field tonight? Can this get any better? Can this get any worse? But most importantly, can anyone dethrone the king? This is a beautiful sport, and the questions make the journey that much more special. Ladies and gentlemen, it is week 1 of college football, the second week that we're going to cover. I've said this before, I'll say it again. Week 0 is like Christmas Eve, where you get like a little precursor to the college football season. Today is the first day of Christmas, and then your team is going to give you either 12, 13, maybe even 14 presents. And then it's up to the football gods if those are good or bad presents. But nonetheless, we are so beyond excited that college football is back. Huge week 1. We've already had 2 great days of games on Thursday and Friday. We're going to talk a little bit about those games here in a little bit. But let's go ahead. Let's get into this week's show. We're going to talk a lot about the upcoming season. Without further ado, let's go ahead. And speaking of Christmas Day, I am going to give out some Christmas presents to some teams, some fan bases, and some players. And so I figured, in the Christmas spirit, with how much I love college football, what better way to start the season? First gift I'm going to give out. I'm going to give Georgia a harder schedule. I have no hate against Georgia. My only complaint is they play a softer schedule. Now, it's not their fault that Georgia Tech has been sucking the last few years and just kind of hands them a cakewalk win. But one thing that Michigan gets ripped on a lot about, but nobody takes into consideration, is Michigan does play an easy schedule, but they play all FBS schools. The Big Ten has a rule that you can't play an FCS school, which is a rule I appreciate. Whereas the SEC usually plays 1 to 2 FCS schools a year. Georgia plays UT Martin today. No disrespect to UT Martin. I'm sure they're a fine FCS school, but you can't travel to Athens and be excited about this game. I think they should replace the FCS school they're playing with the previous year's Sun Belt champion. I think, again, it wouldn't be a super close game at that point. And again, I understand how good Georgia is, but at least give their schedule a little bit more respect. Next gift I'm going to give out. I'm looking at the Pac-12 and Florida. They're both going to get the same gift. It's a time machine. Florida's going to go back to 2008. They're going to stop the players from getting arrested, and they're going to get Urban Meyer a heart doctor, so that way he doesn't have a heart attack and he has to resign. To the Pac-12, I'm going to send them back to last year where they can sign their ESPN deal that they were offered. They declined a $30 million deal per school from ESPN, and then the best offer they got was from Apple TV since then, which would have been $25 million plus incentives, but I don't think they were hitting any of those incentives. So we're going to send those 2 groups back in time to kind of relive their glory days. Next gift I'm giving out, speaking of the Pac-12, we're going to give Oregon State and Washington State a gift. They're going to get some damn respect. They are the two teams. They are the Tupac, the Tupac left. They absolutely deserve more respect. They have great programs. I understand Stanford is across the board one of the best athletic programs in the country. Cal brings absolutely nothing to the table, but they're off to the ACC now. We're going to talk about realignment later. I just feel like these programs, not even just football, but across the board, are criminally underrated. They deserve a lot better, and I really think they should be able to join the American Conference, the Mountain West, or at the very least, maybe the Big 12 changes their mind. They want to add two more, or maybe the Big 10 wants to go to the Big 20. Who knows? Um, Next gift I'm giving out is to Nebraska players and fans. It's a goddamn Xanax. Players need to relax in certain situations. If they would have just played their game and not fumbled that ball late, they win a huge game at Minnesota. Nebraska fans need a Xanax from watching their football team play, so I'm going to give Nebraska some Xanax. Next gift I'm giving out is to USC. The Trojans need a competent defensive coordinator. They have some of the best defensive players in the country, and they can't stop the run. They were 106th in total defense last year. They gave up 396 yards total last week to San Jose State. 198 of them were rushing yards. San Jose State in 2022 averaged 95 rushing yards a game. So they've already doubled their rushing yards in one game from last year. USC could really use a competent defensive coordinator, especially if they want to become a college football contender. And speaking of USC, the very last gift I'm going to give out on the first day of Christmas for college football season is Reggie Bush getting his damn Heisman Trophy back. He deserves it. He should have never lost it. The fact that they haven't given it back to him yet is despicable. So you know what? For Christmas, Reggie Bush gets his Heisman Trophy back.
Quick question.
Yeah.
You had mentioned some teams out west getting the invite to the ACC. Do you think it's a foregone conclusion that they actually accept that and go? Because right now it's just an offer. Yesterday it was just an offer. I didn't see that they had accepted it. Oh.
Yeah, they're gone.
Mm.
They had to apply to the ACC.
Oh, okay. All right.
So let's keep moving. Let's go ahead and look at Slade. You want to talk about some playoff teams and who you think is locked?
Yeah, so I kind of have 8 or 9 teams here that I think there's a 100% chance that I can definitely see these teams in the playoff for, depending on who wins the conference, kind of how things fall. I just wonder how many teams you guys realistically think can get into that playoff conversation, and who you think legitimately has a chance. We have top 25, but I don't think that there's 25 teams that are going to make the playoffs. I'll just give my teams, and I just wanted to see who you guys thought. I think the top 4 are definite. Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, and Bama, I think, are easy picks to definitely think that they can make this playoff 4. I have LSU, PSU, and FSU being teams that I think that if they win their conference, that's their chance at getting in. I don't think that these teams get in without a conference win. Clemson is also one of those teams that I think has a great chance at getting in, just because I think that they're the team. Personally, I think they're going to win the ACC, so I think that gets them in. And then the last spot that I have for teams that I think are getting in is the winner of Texas, Oklahoma. I think for the Big 12, I think that those two teams, only one of them has that opportunity. So I just think whoever wins that game has that opportunity. George, what are your thoughts on that?
I'll let Nick go first since I talked the whole opening. We can't hear you.
I apologize.
Oh, there you
That's my
go.
fault. Anyway, yeah. So, Slade, I like where you went with that. We talked about it a little bit in the group chat for the podcast. I think that this year, when it comes to the top level of college football, this is probably the most parity I've seen, at least in a few years. I think that there's a lot of question marks on a lot of teams that we normally don't have question marks on. Alabama's kind of been on the low compared to where they were for that 10, 11 year stretch, whatever that was. Georgia, they got a new quarterback coming in. He's supposed to be more talented, but we haven't seen him play a game yet, or at least start a season. So there's a lot of question marks at the top. But again, the Georgias, the Alabamas, I'd even throw LSU up in that top tier. Michigan, Ohio State, those are the teams, when those 4 teams are selected at the end of the season, that you kind of expect to see up there. But again, a lot of question marks with really all those teams that I just named. Um, you think about LSU and Bama, like they're going to end up playing each other. Um, it's really hard to, for me, it's hard to sit here and say, yeah, I 100% think that any team is making it. But again, if we're naming teams that if we had to pick the Georgias, the Michigans, the Ohio States, Bama, those are the teams that, in my mind, if I had to pick, those are the ones I'm the most comfortable picking.
Yeah. I have 10 schools that I think have the best shot at making the playoffs. Like you said, I don't think anybody's a 100% lock. Weird things happen every year in college football. But 1 through 10, my first team that I think is almost definitely going to make the playoffs is Georgia, just because of their schedule. I think they can lose maybe one game throughout the regular season, or even maybe the SEC championship, and they'll still be fine to make the playoffs. Michigan at 2, Ohio State at 3. I feel like those two are interchangeable there. Um, the main reason I have Ohio State at 3 there is simply because of Marvin Harrison Jr. I understand that there was some questions about their quarterback. I know they named Kyle McCord this past week, but at the end of the day, when you're throwing the ball to Marvin Harrison Jr., it makes your job as a quarterback a million times easier. They still have a great running game as well. I think Ohio State's going to be fine this year. I have LSU at 4, Bama at 5. Again, those two teams are going to decide the SEC West until Alabama beats LSU, and I think with LSU's returning talent, I think that they stack up a little bit better to Alabama. So I have them ahead of Alabama. Penn State I have at 6. Florida State I have at 7. Clemson at 8. Florida State and Clemson. Again, the ACC is going to come down to those two. If it's a one-loss ACC champion, which I think it will be for either one of those two teams, that's who's going to make the playoff for the ACC. And last, I have 2 schools from the Pac-12. I have them so low because we talk about it every season. It is just the cannibalistic nature of that conference. Doesn't matter how good you are. USC was so great last year. Then they went and they dropped a tough game to Utah twice. There's no easy days in the Pac-12, and it just always seems like that turns around and bites these teams. I didn't put the Big 12 in here. I think the Big 12 is going to be cutthroat this year. I don't see whoever makes the Big 12 championship having only one loss at the absolute most. I think we're going to be looking at 2-3 lost teams, 2 or 3 lost teams playing for the Big 12 title. And so I don't think the Big 12 is, again, just cut out for it this year just because I think it's going to be so competitive. Oklahoma looks like it's resurgent. Texas Tech is a team I'm very high on. Still think TCU can be sneaky. A lot of people are doubting them. They have an easy schedule up until I think week 6 or 7. If they can get through Colorado today, I think they're set up for a great run, and they could be in a very good position where if they can, upset maybe one of those 2 teams in Texas, Oklahoma, or even Texas Tech, they can still find themselves back there. Baylor's looking to have a better year. So again, that's why I just feel like the Big 12 is going to be more volatile than the Pac-12 is normally. So those are the 10 teams I have with I feel like a shot to make the playoff. Of course, there's, we talked about it last week. I don't think we're going to have a TCU-S team this year, but who knows? All right, moving on. Let's go ahead. Nick, you want to play a little game of over-under?
I don't know why that just happened right there. I literally just unmuted it for him to start talking. But anyway, so I know we have our cash out picks. I know we have our game picks. But for any of the folks watching that might be curious about other over-unders that we might not pick in our cash out picks, so we're going to go ahead. We're going to go through the games that we're looking at today. And I just want you, if you want to give an explanation, you can give an explanation. You don't have to. But I want to go ahead and go through those and see what you guys think if we're hitting overs or unders in these games. So up first, we got Fresno State at Purdue. Slade, what do you think?
I'm going to go over with this. I think Fresno State's going to come out, score a lot of points, and I think Purdue is going to just try and play catch up the whole game. So I think that there should be a decent amount of points scored.
I'm going over too, but simply for the fact that Graham Harrell is Purdue's new offensive coordinator. They're running an air raid style offense. So it's either going to go really well and they're going to put up a lot of points, or Hudson Card from Texas is going to throw like 6 interceptions and struggle. But I think Purdue will put up a lot of points. And again, Fresno State, I think, is going to be having to play catch up.
And I'm going to go ahead and agree with you guys. It seems kind of low. I mean, I know there is going to be some defense played here, but 46.5, that doesn't leave a whole lot of room. So I think it's going to hit the over is going to hit too. Up next, we have Coastal Carolina at UCLA, 66.5. George, go ahead.
I'm going with over. Coastal Carolina doesn't play very good defense. Again, they're a team with a brand new offense this season with Jamie Chadwell, their head coach, leaving, taking that shotgun triple option with him. But still, I think with the pieces that Coastal Carolina returns on offense is enough to put up some points. And again, their defense just isn't that great. So I think UCLA is it's going to be a high scoring affair.
What do you think, Slade?
Yeah, I agree. I think that, like George said, Coastal Carolina doesn't play a lot of great defense. I think the Pac-12 doesn't play any defense. So two non-defensive playing teams against each other, I think we're going to see 70 points scored.
Yeah, I agree with you once again. I mean, anytime you see a Pac-12 team and the over/under, it's hard not to take the over. UCLA is going to move the ball around. Coastal Carolina is not going to be able to stop them. UCLA's defense isn't that great either, so I agree with you. Next up, we have Ohio State at Indiana, set at 59.5. Slade, what do you think?
I'm going to take the under here. I think that Ohio State goes out and throws a blank at Indiana and beats them like, I don't know, 40 something nothing. And so I think that they're going to hit the under. I think a lot of points are going to be scored. I just don't think Indiana's going to score any.
I agree with Slade. I think Ohio State easily covers the 30.5 point spread, but I don't think they quite get to that 59. Indiana is just not good. So yeah, and it might take a little bit for Ohio State to get their offense clicking. It might only be up 21-0 at halftime, and then at the end of the third quarter, they're 49-0. They pull their starters and they rest them. But yeah, so I'll take the under, but I think Ohio State does cover that 30.5 spread.
Yeah, I honestly, gut instinct is to take the under here, but we've all picked the same thing so far, so I'm just going to go out on a limb and take the over. Ohio State's going to put up points. It's first week. They have some questions on the offense, but again, you have Marvin Harrison Jr. I think that they alone can put up 40-something points, might take their starters out. Indiana might pull out a touchdown and a field goal or something dumb like that to help push it over the over. Again, instinct, I would take the under here, but got to be different. Can't be the same. Up next, we have Colorado at TCU. This is a very intriguing game for me, set at 63.5. George, what do you think?
I'm taking the over. Colorado, or not even Colorado, but when Deion was at Jackson State, their defense had issues when they played good competition. Watching their spring game, their defense concerns me. And I mean, I think their offense is going to be fine. And then you look at TCU coming out of the Big 12, again, another conference that doesn't like to play a lot of defense. And I see this being a high scoring affair. This might even hit, who knows, maybe 70, 80 points total, but I'm going to take the over.
I like that, but just to disagree, I'm going to take the opposite. I mean, I think that there is going to be a lot of points scored, but I'm just going to say that it's really close and the under hits.
Yeah, Slade's calling 62 points scored.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm gonna agree with George here. Again, this is kind of a tough one. We talked about it outside the podcast. We don't really know what we're gonna see out of Colorado yet. So this game is gonna tell us a whole lot. We're gonna see if the offense can, live up to what it needs to live up to be competitive. Because like you said, the defense, Deion's defense has struggled. So we'll see how it is this year. Up next, we have Boise State at Washington, 58.5. George, go ahead.
I'm taking the under in this. Boise State doesn't put up a lot of points. They like to run the ball and run out the clock. Washington has a pretty good rushing defense as well. Their pass defense struggled last season. I know Washington's going to want to throw the ball around, but I think Boise State's going to eat enough clock. I'm going to take the under 58.5.
I'm going to go with the opposite. I think I'm going to take the over here. I just think that I think the spread is going to be a definite thing that hits here. I just think that it's going to kind of remind me of Notre Dame Navy this past weekend, and that, like George said, one team runs the ball a lot, the other team likes to throw it a good bit, and I just think that they're going to just barely get over that 59-point threshold.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm still a little on the fence about this. I'm not sure how I feel it, and you both went split, so that didn't help my decision at all. But I think I'm gonna agree with Slade on this one and take the over. This is a Washington team, that we've seen last year. Obviously, 2 different seasons, but that can put up points and put up points in a hurry. If they catch Boise State slipping, they can easily add 2-3 touchdowns on you in a matter of what feels like seconds. I think that Boise State is going to get theirs. They'll get in the end zone at least once, maybe add a field goal or two. Might be late in the game and some garbage time, but it all counts towards the over. So I'm going over. Up next, we have West Virginia at Penn State, 48.5. Go ahead, Slade.
I'm gonna take the over here, I guess. I think that it's a stripe out game. It's basically a whiteout game for Penn State. I think that they've got a lot of hope behind Drew at quarterback, and I think that they want to try and renew some type of rivalry here. I think that West Virginia is just kind of the downtime right now, personally, and so I think a lot of points are scored, but it's going to look like George had said. I think that it's going to be less scoring than expected in the first half, similar to Ohio State. But then I think in the second half, Penn State's going to open it up, and they're going to end up getting the spread and the over in this game.
What about you, George?
I'm going to go with the over because that's my cash out pick, but I'll save my reasoning for my cash
For the
out.
cash out. All right. I'm going to agree with you. I think that if you're Penn State, week one doesn't get talked about enough. Really, week one can make or break your whole season. And if you're a team that's been out of the college football playoff picture, has been out of your conference championship picture, these are the games that starts your season. And if you're Penn State and you want to be competing against Michigan, Ohio State, and see your name possibly in that college football playoff picture, this is a game you got to go out and you got to impose your will on, a team that's weaker than you. West Virginia fans don't like to admit it, but it is what it is. I'm going with the over here. Up next, we got three more after this. We got UNC versus South Carolina set at 64.5.
I'm going to go under here. I think that it's going to be a low-scoring affair. I think that while I have South Carolina winning this game, I don't think that Spencer Rattler is going to be the person that ended the season. I think that they're going to have a close, gutty win here, but I don't think that he's going to come out and score 40 points for his team tonight. Tonight.
I'm going with the over. UNC plays terrible defense. Gene Chizik, I don't understand how he wasn't fired after last season. And South Carolina is much the same way. They really struggle on the defensive side of the ball. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take the over in this game. I think it's a close game, but I think it's a high scoring game.
Yeah. This is another one I was kind of on the fence about. I think I'm going to agree with Slade here. I know UNC doesn't like to play very good defense, but I think South Carolina's defense, we've seen last year that they can stop teams. Obviously things change, but I think that's something to really build on. I think the defense is going to come out and hold UNC under 30 points. And then South Carolina, they might put up 30. They might be, 24 to 28. But I think it's going to push the line there, but I think it is going to hit the under is going to hit. Up next, we have the University of South Alabama at Tulane. It is set at 51.5. George, what do you think?
I'm taking the under. USA had a great offense last year, and so did Tulane, but I think it's going to be a week one struggle. And so I think this is going to be a nice close game, but I'm going to take the under.
I'm taking the over here. I think both teams have something to prove in terms of their conference play and stuff like that. And just overall their offense, they just want to go out and prove it that they deserve to kind of be looking at conference championship at the end of the year, So I just think that both teams are going to go out and score a bunch of points.
Yeah. This is another tough one. I think I'm going to go ahead and agree with George here. We've seen Tulane's defense really show up at times. And no disrespect to USA, but their offense is probably going to see a lot of struggles today. I think they're going to put up points. I don't think they're going to get blanked. But I think Tulane is going to, smother them for the most part. And Tulane's offense isn't necessarily one you think of, that's explosive and can put points up in a hurry. They might come in bunches, but I don't think it's going to be enough to hit the over. Our second to last game is Clemson versus Duke. It is set at 55.5. Slade, what do you think?
I'm going to take the under here. I think that Clemson goes out and kicks the crap out of Duke. I just don't think that Duke's going to be able to score more than 2 scores in this game, and I think that Clemson's, while they're going to beat them, I don't think that it's going to be enough to hit that over.
I'll take the under too, but I don't think it's a blowout. I think Duke is a lot better than people give them respect for. But I think this is two really good defenses. Cade Klubnik, it looks like the next big thing coming out of Clemson. But again, this is week one. They have a lot of new pieces on that offense outside of Will Shipley. But I think it's going to take a little bit to get the ball rolling for this offense. I think this is a close game, but I'm going to give it to Clemson and the under.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. You think back to last season, Clemson really their defense was there. They needed the offense to be more consistent, be more productive. Um, I think that they'll get that this season, but I don't think it's week one. There's still some kinks that are going to need to be worked out against. I don't know if underrated is the right word, but I should say unrespected Duke football team. Um, so I think it's going to be closer than what a lot of people might think. And I think the scoring is going to be relatively low. I'm taking the under. And then last but not least, we have our Sunday night game, which is always nice. College football spread out over multiple days is the best thing in the world. Um, we have LSU versus Florida State. The line is set at 55.5. What do you think, George?
I'm going to take the over. You have two Heisman contender QBs going at it. I think this is going to be a high-scoring affair. LSU's best defensive player is also suspended for this game, so I think this is going to be an offensive shootout.
I'm going with the under here. While I do think that it's really crazy, I mean, I don't know if we talked about it earlier this week, George, but the fact that LSU wanted to try and schedule a week 0 game just because they wanted to get their defensive player to be able to play in this game is just crazy. I mean, they want to play like Nickel State or something like that in week 0 just so that they can go out and use that game as a suspended game or whatever. But I think this is going to be that kind of run the ball try and make sure that these, like George said, these two Heisman contending quarterbacks don't make mistakes and don't look like a fool out there, though. So I just think that final score is going to be like 23-21 or something small like that, and that's enough to get the under.
Yeah, that's it. That's all I got.
All right, we're going to move on. We have more conference realignment news to talk about. So yesterday, it was early in the morning. It was before 8 o'clock. The ACC got back together and they voted and they agreed to accept Stanford, Cal, and SMU. So I just want to talk about this real quick. Stanford and Cal make no geographical sense. I understand that is out the window at this point with all the teams joining the Big Ten and so on. But they're going to have much higher travel costs. And Cal is in a ton of debt right now because they tried to revamp that whole stadium. And so for Cal, this move doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I understand Stanford wasn't going to leave or join another conference without Cal, and they were absolutely against joining the Mountain West. The other team joining is SMU. They're taking no TV money, and that was kind of the big sticking point that a lot of the ACC teams were like, if you want to join, you're not going to take any more of our money. That's fine, we'll have you. They do have really rich donors though that are going to help cover those costs. They were primed to join the Power 5 ranks, during their early 80s success. If you want to go watch the 30 for 30 on SMU, it's called the Pony Express. One of the best documentaries I've ever watched. But they were having all this success, and then it came out that they were paying players. A lot of shady stuff was going on underneath the table, and they get the death penalty. Their program was shut down for 2 whole years. That was back in 1987. So they've been fighting to get back to that level. They didn't make another bowl game until 2009. Since then, they've been a staple in the Group of 5. They've been a very consistent team, but they've been dying to get back to that Power 5 level, especially seeing teams like Houston, other schools nearby get elevated. They felt left out, so they were just desperate to get back to Power 5.
Yeah, I mean, I also want to add that SMU, like you had said, they were paying players or accused, whatever. They're a Texas school with a lot of funding, and the NIL deal changes it completely for their recruiting status. I mean, now they can funnel all this money into the players legally or illegally, however you want to say. I mean, everyone's working it with the money thing now with the NIL deals. So at least they're able to kind of compete on the same level as other teams because they've got a ton of money in donorship at that school.
Yeah, absolutely. There's 2 schools now left in the former Pac-12, the Tupac schools, everybody's calling them now. Some of their options that are not necessarily open, but that could be a possibility later. If you want to look at when Oregon, Washington, all the other schools left the Pac-12, we broke that down on a podcast. So make sure you go check that out. We broke down all the numbers and all that. American Conference pays $7 million to a school. That name has been really floated around for those two here lately. The Mountain West pays $4 million. The Big 12 said they're done. They don't want to add any more schools, but with just two remaining, I think they could open that up. But who knows? They also get a hefty paycheck. I think it's $31 million right now. In the Big 10, they could also become the Big 20. Again, that's another $30 million. That keeps the rivalries with Washington and Washington State, Oregon State. Where do you guys see this going from here? What do you think happens to these last two schools left in the Pac-12?
Nick, you want to go?
Yes. Yeah. So obviously they're going to have to go somewhere. You can't have a conference with just two teams. And now there's always the possibility of being independent. But with the way that Notre Dame is looked upon, I don't really think that that's I wouldn't say a viable option, but I don't think that's an option that those two teams would be looking at. However, at this point, they're kind of like the two like weak nerds playing football on the playground in elementary school. They might be smart, they might know what they're doing, but nobody really wants them on their team because it's about athletics. So it's really hard to tell, where those two end up. I don't think if I had to pick somewhere, I would say they either follow along and go to the ACC or the Big 12. If I'm those two schools, I'm avoiding the Big 10 and the SEC at all costs, because you go in there, like you're already competing for the bottom of your conference beforehand. You go to one of those two conferences, it's going to be brutal, and then you have to try to not only recruit against those teams, play against those teams, travel to those teams, and I just don't see them doing that. So if I had to pick, I'd say SEC or Big 12.
Yeah, I think the Mountain West is the best option for them. I understand money-wise that they might not feel that way, but I think in terms of just looking at football, which is what all of these schools looked at when they looked at conference realignment, none of them looked at their track and field athletes flying across the country or volleyball athletes. They didn't look at any of the other sports. So just in terms of football, I think the Mountain West is the best option for them. They immediately look at being able to be competitive in those conferences in that conference right away, I feel. So I just think that's the best option for them right now.
All right. Moving on, we're gonna do some trivia this morning. These two have no idea what we're doing. Nick, since you're leading the pick'em standings, we'll talk about that here in a minute. I'll give you first choice. Do you want to go first or second?
Oh, I'll defer, only because I know I'm not going to be good at this.
All right, Slade. So you'll be up first. So what we're doing is since 1990, 19 different schools have won a Heisman Trophy. I need you to name those schools, and the way we'll go is we're just going to go back and forth. Slade, you'll go first. If you get 3 wrong, you're out, and then whoever has the most right at the end will win. So Slade, give me a school since 1990 that has won a Heisman Trophy.
I'm going to go USC.
Okay, that's correct.
Easy.
Nick, who do you got?
Bama.
All right, Slade, back to you.
Georgia.
They have not.
Really?
Yeah, they have not won a Heisman
Yeah.
since 1990.
That
your
was
first
almost
one
going to
wrong.
be my pick, so I'm glad that I didn't say that.
Do I go again?
No,
All right.
it'll be next turn.
Hold on, who's been named already?
USC and Alabama.
Okay, LSU.
That is correct. Slade,
I'm going to go with Oregon.
that is correct.
Florida.
That is correct. Back to you, Slade.
Ohio State.
Correct. Nick,
Damn you, Slade. I don't know. That was my go-to pick. Hold on. There's dogs barking. I'm gonna go with Florida State.
correct. Slade, back to you.
Clemson.
No,
Damn, I thought Deshaun Watson. My
no,
bad.
You finished second.
I'm not 100% sure about this. Texas.
Correct.
Texas A&M.
Correct.
Ooh. Ooh, that. Georgia. Oklahoma.
Correct.
Stanford.
No. So that's your third wrong.
Damn,
So
Andrew
Nick,
Luck
you
needs to do better.
Nick, you win. You win 6-4. The other schools that were on this list since 1990, BYU was a 1990 winner. Michigan has won 2. Miami has won. Colorado has won. Wisconsin and Nebraska have one each. Auburn and Baylor were the other schools, and Louisville is the final school that was not named in that trivia contest. So that was a lot of fun. That we'll be doing that every week from here on out. If Let's go ahead, and it's time to look at our cash out picks for today. Here's our standings so far this season. This includes on Thursday we made some picks as well. So make sure you're following us on TikTok and you check out the podcast every week because we make these picks on there. Nick is 2-1, Slade is 1-2, and I am 2-1 as well. So Nick, let's go ahead and get your cash out picks first for today.
Yeah, so up first, I took Colorado plus 20.5. Like I said earlier, there's a lot of question marks with this team. We don't really know what we're going to get. I think this is a game that, I don't necessarily have them winning, but I think it could be very competitive, especially at least in the first half. I think they can keep it close. Nobody really knows what to expect. And, I think they're going to come out, surprise some people, and catch their opponents off guard. So I'm taking Colorado plus 20.5. And then I took Utah State plus 23.5. Again, I think this is a Utah State team that doesn't really get the respect they deserve. I think they push this spread a little bit, maybe in the 18-point range, but this is one I think they cover.
Alrighty. And all these odds and lines are coming from DraftKings as well. Slade, who do you got this week?
Yeah, so first I'm going to go with LSU and Florida State. I'm going under 56.5. I'd already kind of explained with Nick's topic that I just think it's going to be a lower scoring affair than what is expected from these two Heisman candidate quarterbacks. And then the other one, I said it last week, I'm going the over with every USC game until they prove me otherwise. I can easily see them scoring 60 points by themselves and giving up, 25 points, 28 points, whatever, like they did last week. So I think the over hits there.
Yeah. For my cash out picks this week, first up, I'm going to take the Michigan Eastern Carolina over 52.5. I could easily see Michigan scoring 52 points on their own. Last year, Michigan scored 40.4 points per game. ECU was 32.5. I think this is an improved ECU team. I don't think they're good enough to compete with Michigan. But I could see my prediction for this game is Michigan 45, ECU 17. So I have this going over 52.5. The other
real quick before you do this, I want to try and guess you said that there was a reason that you were going to explain. I think that you think West Virginia comes out and shocks Penn State at first and they have to play catch up the whole game. What do you think?
No, that is not what I'm going with. Last year, Penn State averaged 35.8 points per game. The last 5 years, they've had 11 night games. They've gone over 50 in 8 of them. 6 of those 11 games have been at home, and they've gone over 50 in 4 of those games. I think Penn State has a point to prove. I think they're going to come out. Drew Allar. Is it Allar or Allar?
Everyone says it twice. I have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah, it depends.
Well, I'm going to call him Allar until I'm told otherwise. But
I've heard like Aller, like Allar. Yeah.
So,
to be honest, I have to ask him.
But either way, I think he needs to come out and he got some playing time last year. And, it was in a lot of big situations. He kind of struggled at times, so he needs to come out and have a statement game. He needs to prove that Penn State is a contender to not just win the Big Ten this year, but also make the playoffs. So he's going to need a big week 1 to kind of get some eyes on him and this team. I think Nick Singleton at running back is going to be a Heisman contender as well if he can stay healthy. West Virginia is going to struggle a lot this year. I'm not expecting anything out of them. I can't believe Neil Brown wasn't fired after last season. But I have this being 35 to 15, and that'll get us over 49. So, moving on. It's time.
Is that 5 field goals?
Yeah. You can hold them to 5 field goals. It's time for upset alert.
I'm not saying I couldn't, but
yeah,
it's just funny that that's the number you went with.
Yeah, I had to get to 50. So. Let's go ahead and look at our upset alerts. We did this last year. We're excited to do it again this year. So the way we're going to do it is a lot like how ESPN does it. We're gonna keep points. You get 1 point if the upset you pick covers their spread, and you get 2 points if they outright win. So first up, Slade, who do you have on upset alert this week?
I put Tulane on upset alert. I think that they're going to have a very high scoring game with South Alabama. And so I just think that if South Alabama is able to come out and kind of prove their offense, get a little bit of defense rolling, I think that they could really scare Tulane here, open a game of the season, especially after Tulane had one heck of a season last year.
Nick, who do you got this week?
Yeah, I'm putting TCU on upset alert. Like I talked about, I think Colorado covers the 20.5 point spread. And again, with the question marks that we have with Colorado, I think TCU, well, not I think, TCU definitely took a step back this year. They lost their two biggest playmakers on offense, not to mention other playmakers around the field. I think their ranking is a little overrated. So I think Colorado comes out, kind of smacks them in the mouth early. TCU's not expecting it, and they got to kind of fight and play catch up to be able to pull out the win. We'll talk about it later. I do have TCU winning this game, but I definitely think that Colorado has more of a chance than the 20.5 spread would suggest.
For my upset alert, I'm going to go with Washington. And it's not just because I hate Washington, but I think Boise State is a sneaky good team. They lost the Mountain West Championship game last year. I think they're hungry to go out there and prove a lot of people wrong, and show that they are contenders, maybe even New Year's Six Bowl contender. And I think this is the perfect game to get their season started. Washington might come out of the gates a little slow. There's a lot of heavy expectations on that team. And I think Boise State can hang around a little bit. Like I said, they like to run the ball. They have a very good pass defense. They were number 5 in the country last year. And I can definitely see them kind of taking some of that wind out of Washington's sails, especially early. And so I'm going to take Boise State, and they're 14-point underdogs right now. Moving on, we're going to do game picks here. But before we do, we just want to shout out one of our best friends, one of our guest stars from last year, Jesse McGee. Him and his wife had a beautiful baby boy, Roper. So congratulations to them. Everybody's doing well. He just Snapchatted me. He's sitting at home watching College Game Day, not us. So I am a little hurt about that. But nonetheless, congratulations to him. Can't wait to have him on the show this year. Before last week, he was our most viewed episode ever at 81 views, and now we have hit 85 with Rico Knows. So thank you to everybody who's watched that episode. It is our most viewed episode to this point. We're hoping this one even breaks that, but we'll have to wait and see.
I can't wait to hear Jesse say that he's on the level Rico Knows now.
Yeah. All right, so time for our game picks. First game up we have is Fresno State at Purdue. This will be 12 p.m. on the Big Ten Network. Nick, who do you have in this one?
Yeah, I'm taking Purdue in this one. I think it's going to be a very close game, very hard-fought game. But I think that Purdue, they got a lot of experience. I think that between that and having home field advantage, yeah, it's a 12 o'clock game, but it's week 1. Everybody has pent all this energy and excitement up for how many months. And I think that, week 1 especially is a time when that energy just gets released. And I think that is going to be enough to carry them over Fresno State.
Slade, who do you got?
I went with Fresno State here. I just think that.
Yeah, you did. My fault.
Yeah, you did.
Anyway, I went with Fresno State here. I just think that they're going to come out. I don't think Purdue shows up against any teams unless it's a really good team and they're looking to upset someone once a year. So I just think that Fresno gets it done.
All right, well, my fault on that. But I'm going to go with Purdue. Originally, I had Fresno State picked, and then I was reading up on Purdue more. And again, Graham Harrell going there. I really feel like this is going to be a much different offense than we're used to seeing. Hudson Hart is a very good quarterback. We saw him a lot at Texas last year, so he brings great experience over. He's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I think this is a close game, though, but I'm going to have Purdue winning this. Next game we have is Colorado at TCU. Nick, you just brought it up, but you're going with TCU?
Yeah, so again, I have TCU in this. I think that on paper, they are the better team. Again, I think Colorado's going to compete. I think Colorado's going to make them uncomfortable. But I just think that there's still too many question marks, and they brought in 86 transfers, something like that, some ridiculous number. So when you bring in that many people, it's hard to get that chemistry to really come together and play at your full level without some game time experience. So this is going to be a good game for them to figure stuff out, but I don't think that it's going to be enough for them to pull it out. I'm taking TCU.
Slade, who you got in this one?
I went with TCU as well. I do think that the spread should probably be closer to like 13.5 just because there's a lot of unknowns with both teams. But I do think that TCU gets it done by at least a score or two here today.
I agree. I think this is a lot closer than that spread. But again, I just think both defenses are going to struggle. I have a little bit more faith in TCU's defense. Again, the quarterback they're returning was their original starter from last season. I know they're missing a lot of pieces from that team, but you have somebody that knows what they're doing at the quarterback position that has run this offense, for a whole season. He's practiced the entire offseason. He's ready to get back and be healthy. Looked very good against Colorado last year. Again, I understand almost completely different roster. I think they kept like 9 players from last year's team. Regardless, I think TCU just has a little bit more experience, more gel with them. Close, but I'm going to give the edge to TCU in this one. Next game we got is Coastal Carolina at UCLA. This will be 10:30 on ESPN tonight. Nick, who do you got in this one?
All right, so Nick went with Coastal Carolina. No, I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
no, Nick goes with UCLA. We'll wait for him to unfreeze. Yeah, I think this is going to be a very good game. Slade, who do you got?
I went with UCLA as well. I think that, like we had already talked about, I don't think there's a lot of defense that's going to be played in this game, but I do think that UCLA's offense is just better at this point than Coastal Carolina.
I'm going to disagree. I'm going with Coastal Carolina here. They returned Grayson McCall, Brown, and Pinkney on offense. They're going to have a brand new offensive coordinator, so new wrinkles to that style of offense. They know how to put up a lot of points. It might help them that with these new wrinkles, it's not just going to be the same shotgun triple option that we saw, for the last how many years. And I think UCLA is going to take a little bit of time to get rolling here. They might be starting their freshman QB. We're not sure yet. And if that is the case, it's definitely going to be, a struggle to get things going at first. I think Coastal Carolina is just a little bit more experienced, and I think that's what's going to give them the edge here. Nick's back just in time. We're going to pick
I'm
Boise
back.
State at Washington. This will be 3:30 p.m. on ABC. Again, a great game. Nick, who do you got in this one?
This one, like you talked about it, I think they definitely should be on upset alert. This is a Washington team. It kind of seems to be a Pac-12 thing. They like to start out slow and then kind of, once they find their rhythm, they just start bombing the ball down the field. Um, but this is a game where if Boise State can just, stick to their fundamentals and do what they can definitely compete in this game. But I think that Washington is just too good. I think they're going to pull it out.
Slade, who do you got?
Yeah, I went with Washington as well. I think Boise State brings back a great team. I think the line could probably be closer to like 9.5. Give them a couple of points there for Boise State, but yeah, I think Washington gets it done.
Yeah, again, put it on upset alert. I think Boise State covers, but I think Washington just has a little too much firepower on their side. They return a huge number of starters. They're not going to need any time to gel. I think Washington is going to be able to get it done, especially at home. Next game we got is South Alabama at Tulane. My game of the week. I'm excited for this game. Nick, who do you got in this one?
Yeah, so I took Tulane in this one, but I mean, this is gonna be an exciting one to watch. These are two teams that, when you think about the greater picture of college football, don't get the kind of love that I think they deserve. But this is the kind of game where week one, you can kind of put some people on notice and let them know, like, hey, this is not going to be an easy. It's not you come play us or when we go play you. It's going to be very exciting. But I think that Tulane is just gonna have enough to be able to pull it out.
Slade, who do you got in this one?
Yeah, I agree. I went with Tulane here. I think that it's going to be a very high scoring game. Two offenses that are looking to prove themselves, both coming off of really good seasons last year, but I just think Tulane edges them out at the end.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I am very high on Tulane, especially coming off beating USC in the Cotton Bowl. I think, though, the reason that this game is going to be so close is they might get a little caught up in that emotion. Listen, we beat a Power 5 team last year, not just any Power 5 team. Heisman contender, I understand he was banged up, and I'm not trying to harp on that, but I think they might be a little in their own head. We're better than this. They might play down to their or below their opponents, and it could absolutely give South Alabama a chance. But I think with how much firepower that Tulane offense has, it's going to be enough for them to overcome anything and pull out a win at home, especially. Next game we have is taking place right here in Charlotte, North Carolina. We got UNC in South Carolina. This will be 7:30 p.m. on ABC tonight. Nick, who do you have in this one?
Yeah, so I'm taking South Carolina in this. Originally, when I wrote it down, I was taking UNC. But the more I just got to thinking about it, they ended their seasons last year on two completely opposite trajectories. South, played great the last 3-4 games of the season. UNC was the opposite, kind of, was falling apart. And I think that off-season momentum is a huge deal, especially in college football. And uh, between the two teams, South Carolina has all of that momentum. Out of the two teams, they play better defense. Again, we kind of talked about it earlier. I think the offenses are still going to put up a lot of points, but I think that South Carolina is going to end up on top here.
Slade, who do you got?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good game between Drake May and Spencer Rattler. I think the field goal spread is perfect for this game, but I just have South Carolina kind of pulling it out here.
I'm going to go with South Carolina as well. Again, UNC's defense really scares me. I don't think they added enough talent there, and Gene Chizik is just not getting it done at DC. And I think their offense as well really, again, I think Drake May can absolutely be a Heisman contender, but this emphasis over the offseason that they're going to run the ball more and kind of try to save his body really concerns me, because that is what makes Drake May so good. It is a homecoming for him. He's from Charlotte. He played here in Charlotte in his high school. I think, though, just with all those elements of uncertainty around UNC, it's enough for South Carolina to get a huge win in week 1. Next game we're going to look at is West Virginia at Penn State. Shout out to my sister, Jen. She's heading up there right now. Her and her husband are going. Slade is heading there to tailgate after we wrap up here. I don't need to ask you guys who you're picking, but why are you picking Penn State?
I briefly touched on it earlier. West Virginia has, been down the past couple years. Their fans have been all over Twitter. There was like a rumor going around that like 70% of Beaver Stadium was going to be filled with West Virginia fans, which is probably the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. But nonetheless, I don't even think they have enough fans to fill 70% of Beaver Stadium. Penn State is just going to be too much. That defense is going to smother. The offense might be slow to start, but I think they're going to get it together, get that game day rhythm in and really blow the top off.
I mean, that stat is just funny in itself, because I'm pretty sure that 75% of the stadium is season ticket holders, so it's just impossible for West Virginia to uphold that stat. But I'm going with Penn State. I think that George had mentioned night games, especially in Beaver Stadium, they score a lot of points. I don't think that, or I have them losing 2 games this season. I don't think that West Virginia is one of those teams. So I think that they're going to go out there. They're going to have maybe a 1-score, maybe 10-point lead going into halftime, and then I think they're going to really open it up in the second half, and I'm going to have to be pissed off that James Franklin's going to say we're a second half team all season.
We've been a second half team for like my entire life. Why not just keep living with it?
Exactly. I'm gonna go with Penn State. I don't think West Virginia has anything on this
George
team.
is putting the jinx on this team.
Hey, I'll talk about this
Hit
here
him
in a
with the
second.
hezzy.
But Penn State has the roster to compete for the college football playoff. I think it's going to be interesting to watch. If the Michigan game was a whiteout, was at night, I would 100% say Penn State wins that game. Them making that game at noon, I think, takes an edge off of that game for Penn State. And I said this last year when they played Ohio State at noon instead. They competed very well in that game. I think making that a day game absolutely takes a little of the air out of that stadium. But regardless, I still think they can overcome that game. It is going to be very close.
That's a Fox issue, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, but I think Penn State absolutely handles this tonight. This will be the first game on NBC for the Big Ten. Michigan's going to be on Peacock, so it's NBC, kind of station. But this is the first true Big Ten game on NBC. I also love the NBC promos they've been running with Fall Out Boy and that song. I'm super excited to see this game. Slade's going to have a lot of fun. My sister's going to have a lot of fun. Next game we're going to look at, speaking of first Big Ten games on channels, the first CBS game that will be covering a Big Ten game. It is going to be beyond weird hearing the CBS theme and then the Big Ten logo flash across the screen. But I am ready for it. We got number 3 Ohio State visiting Indiana. Nick, who do you got in this one?
Yeah, I'm taking Ohio State here. Either team proves people wrong about their current trajectories and where they're at in the college football landscape. It's going to be Ohio State all day.
Slade, who do you got?
I got Ohio State. I think it's going to be somewhere around like 49-3, and the 3 is generous for Indiana. So Yeah, Ohio State by a ton.
Yeah, I 100% agree here. I don't think this game is going to be close. We talked about it earlier. I think Ohio State easily covers that 30-point spread, but to keep it under, I think it was 59.
Mhm.
But it's Ohio State. It's not even close. Next to last game we're going to look at is Clemson versus Duke Monday night. I always said Monday morning. This will be 8 p.m. on ESPN. Number 9 Clemson versus Duke. Nick, who do you got in this one?
Yeah, I have to take Clemson here. I said earlier I think Duke is not respected enough for where they were and where they've come in college football. But I don't think that they've earned enough respect to be in the conversation with Clemson. Again, Clemson's off a little early on. Duke might bring a little energy. Might keep the first half slow, but Clemson's gonna open up in the second half.
Slade, who do you got?
Yeah, I think Clemson's just got too much manpower. They're going to overpower Duke in this game. Like I do have the under 56 points, but I do think that Clemson gets it done easy.
I'm going with Clemson as well, but again, I think you guys are wrong. I think Duke is. We said this in our ACC preview at the beginning of the season. Duke is my third best team in the ACC. I think that they're going to prove a lot of people wrong. I think they hang around a little bit. I think the spread's 14 points right now.
13,
I yeah, I think it's a one-score game, 10 points at most. I think Duke is going to go out and prove a lot of people wrong. I'm excited for this game. I still think Clemson wins though. They just have the more talent. They do have the better head coach. As much as I hate Dabo Sweeney, he is the better head coach. But I think Duke is going to prove a lot of people wrong, and they're going to go out and get blown out by 50. Now that I'm saying that, so. Our game of the week, the last game we're going to look at is number 5 LSU playing number 8 Florida State. This will be Sunday night, 7:30 p.m. on ABC. This was one of the games of the year last year. Went down. Florida State blocked the extra point that would have sent this game to overtime. They fumbled moments before that. It was just a crazy game. And here we are. Nick, who are you taking tomorrow night in Orlando?
Yeah, first of all, I'm so excited for this game. I think this is going to be absolutely electric. I think this is probably going to be one of the most fun football games I've watched in a decent amount of time. At least I'm hoping it is, because there's a lot of hype behind it. But I think I'm going to give the edge here to Florida State. It's probably going to come down to some last minute play, maybe even overtime. But I think that Florida State has a chip on their shoulder right now. Not to say that LSU doesn't. They'd like to see themselves back up top too, but Florida State was hearing about how trash they were for those couple years, and then a pretty good season. And this year is a year where if they want the ACC title, this is going to be their best chance to do it in a bunch of years. So again, I think they come out with some attitude. It's going to be a hell of a game, but I got to give it to Florida State.
Slade, who are you taking in this one?
Yeah, I'm going with Florida State. I think it's a close game. I think it's like a 28-24, 28-21 game, but I just think that Florida State, I think they beat them the last 2 times, and so I think they go out and get the win on Sunday night.
I'm going to take LSU again. This is who I have winning the national championship this year. I think they absolutely have the roster to do it. A Heisman contending quarterback. I have them beating Florida State close to begin the season. Florida State goes undefeated from here. I have these two meeting in the playoffs actually again. So I think LSU gets off to a fast start here. It's going to be close, but it's going to propel their season, and then LSU can do great things if Brian Kelly can keep his composure like he actually did last year.
Jalen Daniels doesn't even know what's coming.
No, he doesn't. He's gonna. I don't want to say it because I don't want it to happen, but that will wrap up Out of the Tunnel for week 1. We thank you all so much for joining us again to get your Saturday started. Don't forget, we'll be right back here next week for week 2. Thank you all for joining us. We're 8 subscribers shy of 100 here on YouTube, so make sure you tell your friends and have them subscribe. Thank you, everybody, for the support. Have a great week 1, and we will see you next week.
Yep.